Welcome everybody to our panel about voice technology for kids. The rise of smart speaker technology has also seen a rise in usage by kids of the smart speakers. They are used in a living room by the whole family, and nowadays they are even used by kids in their own private rooms. From my experience, voice assistants are one of the first technological gadgets kids have at the moment and using their own, except from smartphones and tablets, which are normally used by their parents. The possibilities to interact, choose, and play without the need to read or write is the main advantage of these technologies. No wonder developers, platforms, and manufacturers are jumping onto the train and are building for voice. The main categories for kids entertainment at the moment are games, quizzes, interactive stories, and storytelling when people start building for voice. In our panel today, we talk about the learnings, challenges, and strategies when you start your voice journey into kids building. We have here some of the most experienced creators of voice experiences for kids. Their applications rank amongst the most used, most 5-star rated, and sometimes most loved applications in the market. I'm honored to have them on a panel today. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience, Adva?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Adva Levin. I am the founder of Pretzel, which is a voice-first studio focusing on kids and family voice apps. Some of our most known skills and actions are Kids Court, which is an Alexa-based judge that settles kids' fights, musical statues and freeze dancers, which are dancing games for kids, and Kids Bop Star, which is a partnership we did with the Kids Bop Kids, where you can be a part of the band.
My name is Gutekunst. I'm the head of marketing and business development for Creativity Inc., which is a design and development studio based in the Bay Area outside San Francisco. We have been around for over 21 years, and we started out designing interactive toys and mobile apps for kids and branched out into voice applications about 4 or 5 years ago, with our first experiences being for Google's platform. We built some of their earliest kids apps, which are still really loved and used today. Ding Dong Coconut, Strangest Day Ever, Jungle Adventure, really fun story adventures and interactive games that leverage our rich capabilities with sound. And we launched our first Alexa experience in December 2018 with Disney Music, and that's the Disney Hits Challenge. And have gone on to build a bunch of branded experiences for Netflix with Stranger Things, Talk to Dustin from Stranger Things on Google, as well as experiences for Coachella and the Grammys, and experiences for Mattel's Uno. So we love working with interactive kids products, have a long history, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much. And what about your background, Sarah?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Andrew Wilson, the Chief Content Officer at Matchbox.io. Matchbox is the company behind some of the most popular voice experiences on Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, and Samsung Bixby. Our portfolio includes 16 voice applications, including Question of the Day, Riddle of the Day, Kids Quiz, and Animal Rescue. We've got millions of fans in dozens of countries around the world in 4 different languages. Our overall aim is to help people learn something new every day, regardless of your age. And we do that through fun and educational content, fun and educational experiences that come through brand new content every single day. A lot of our kids' experiences like Kids Quiz and Animal Rescue have been created by educational specialists. And they're often listed as some of the top 10 Alexa skills out there for kids. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. So a little bit intro about myself as well. I'm Dominik Meissner, co-founder of 169 Labs based in Germany. At 169 Labs, we were building voice experiences since 2017 and have built for the most of the top 10 German kids characters. Outstanding is our skill Maxis Zeitreisen, built for ProSiebenSat.1 Media Company. And this is one of the most used kids skills today in Germany with interactive stories and games. So before we start the discussion here, I'd like to encourage everyone to ask questions in the chat box. We will try our best to answer them while you are watching us. So first question, with Corona lockdown at home and people spending time in the home office and at home, a lot of people using obviously their smart speakers at home. And we in our statistics have seen a rise in usage and different usage patterns than before lockdown. So what are your experiences when you're looking at your statistics, Adva?
So overall, we've seen a general rise, both in overall usage and both a change of patterns. If usually we would have spikes on weekends, now kids and parents are home all the time. So like I would say our weekday usage has pretty much equal to the weekends. I think a lot of our skills are especially designed to work on some things that help kids and parents. So it's not just entertainment, it's also ways to maybe settle disputes or to let out specific energy. And I think it's not intentionally working into a lot of what's happening with this crisis. We have a lot of kids at home, they might be fighting more, and they their apps a lot more. Something interesting that happened, we have an Alexa skill that is called Out the Door, which is a skill that helps kids with their morning routine to get ready for school on time. And that one has spiked as well, which I can't explain it because I don't think anyone is going anywhere, but maybe parents are using it, to just get kids ready for homeschool, which is a surprise for me.
Yeah, that might be the solution or the explanation for it. It's really strange to see this. So Sarah, do you have any experiences with the crisis?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see what the numbers have been doing. There's been a slight uptick overall across the portfolio, but particularly in the kids' voice experiences. So we're actually seeing weekend activity throughout the week now. So before the crisis, we would see throughout the week, we'd see spikes in the morning as people got ready for the day, and then spikes in the evening. So, spikes maybe 7 a.m. and then 7 p.m. And then on the weekend, that would be all kind of spread out. But now during the crisis, we're seeing that weekend activity throughout the week. So you don't see the spikes necessarily. It's just the usage is throughout the day. And that's been really interesting to watch.
So you could say that nowadays every day is a weekend for everybody there.
That's right.
That's right. So in my opinion, these numbers are really encouraging for the ecosystem, because people say it takes usually 21 days to form a habit. And now we are really past this 21 days at the moment. And maybe in the future, kids and their parents will turn to their smart speakers to get kids entertainment instead of going to the traditional outlets like the TV that they have at their homes now. So I know that some of you are not only building for kids, but for adults as well. So what is your experience and your key considerations when you're building a voice experiences directed towards kids? I think, Adva, you have experience in these two fields.
Yes. I would say in general, designing a good voice experience for kids is similar to designing one for adults, just everything has to be more to an extreme. So things like keeping your dialogue short and concise. I think that's super important because kids have less of an attention span sometimes, and or keeping very limited choices. For example, I would ask if I really want them to make a choice, I would usually offer 2 choices for kids. You offer 3 and up, they get a bit confused, or they start asking you for a 4th option that doesn't even exist, but you got them thinking. Error handling, I think, is super important for kids. So in a lot of the adult skills, the input is super important, especially if you're doing something that's task-oriented. And I think obviously most of the kids' skills and actions are more entertainment-based. So maybe their input is not 100% critical to get the task done. And I think in that case, like, we don't like to say things like, sorry, I didn't get that, could you repeat yourself to a child? Because it puts them in a place where they feel like they failed, even if they did everything correctly. And I think in a lot of cases, they could be right on script, they could say what they are required to say, but, ASR is not working properly, or there's a lot of other people talking in the background and the device couldn't hear them. So we don't want to make them feel like they have failed or have done something wrong. And if we have to get an input, we usually just ask the question in another way, in a way that makes them feel like they're maybe answering another question, but we're still getting that input, or we just move the conversation forward. And also, I think something that's super important when designing for kids, and this is across all mediums, is to remember that there are parents involved. And with smart speakers, it's like even more obvious because it's a very public medium. It's not like, a kid sitting like this on a tablet. It's everyone in the room will hear you. So I think with everything we do, we keep in mind that parents or other family members, siblings are around and they can take part in the experience or not, but they are invited and welcome to do so.
So there are differences in building for kids, and what are your experiences with it, Caitlin?
Yeah, I think Adva touched on a lot of really important points about remembering their abilities, and their egos are a little bit different. We also think a lot about just how they're differently abled. And so kids at different ages have different abilities, they're developing, even their ability to imagine things when we're talking about what they could be doing in the home or where a story is going to take them. We're very pointed about what we ask them to do from a mental standpoint as well as just a physical standpoint. So part of that is setting up the story so that it's very clear when they're supposed to tune in for an idea or a fact that's going to help move it along. For example, actually playing a sonic cue for them to tune in and listen for the prompt that they're going to have to respond to. We introduce those pretty much within the first voice apps that we put in, and this is from experience that we've learned over many years of developing toys, and it really helped for kids to tune in and to know that they have to keep listening and talking about things. Another part is, as screens are coming up, just remembering that a lot of kids don't have the ability to read, especially not quickly. So making sure that you keep the text really simple. And that's true also when you're talking to them, like just keeping the experience more straightforward and using less complex words unless you're trying to teach them certain things about them. I think kids of all ages really like to learn and they like to be quizzed. So that type of content tends to be really popular. And whenever we're designing, we try to make things, this is an interactive medium. Your voice is what moves things along. And we like to give kids that agency so that they can really affect the storyline. And it's not just a yes or no path, like branching narrative where they can just be passive. We want them to really pay attention and to be excited about things. Final thing is we design our experiences so there really aren't a lot of wrong answers. We design to elicit responses that can't be confused with others so that we can handle synonyms more easily. But when kids are talking, and if there is a unhandled prompt, we tend to just move the story along anyway so that they don't get stuck. I think that's really important.
One thing that I think is super important is to get kids involved in the creation of the skill or the voice app. And we always start, as a group of adults coming up with an idea that we think will work. But my experience has been that every single time we brought a prototype into a room full of kids, they would take it somewhere else with their imagination. And things that, I've been doing this for a pretty long time now, and I still can think that I have a great idea, but you put it into a group of kids and they understand it another way around, or they're not engaged by something that you thought would really work. And I think user testing is a super important part in everything you do, but I think with kids, it's like specifically critical. And another thing is we always try to get them involved in content. So a lot of our apps are very content focused, but it's not really narrative driven. So there's like a lot of options for specific points in the voice app. And then we get them to take part in writing content, sharing their own, and then they like to, see their own words within a voice app. I think it makes them feel very special.
Yeah, I think you mentioned two very important points, like involving the kid as a creator. And we have seen just simply stuff when the kid can enter the name, and then next time the kid's using the voice application, they are greeted by their names. That puts a smile on their face. So this is one, I think, one aspect. And the other one about user testing is really important. Adult brains are built differently than kids' brains, and which is a good thing. But so we can't come out with all the options that kids use our applications with. So I think these principles and other principles that you all mentioned, like being clear, use simple language, and not to try to frustrate the user, can also apply to adult skills as well. So everyone out there building at the moment, try to think how to simplify everything. If your skill can be used by a 5-year-old, it will be really easy to be used by an adult as well. So keep that in mind when you're building for kids and for adults as well. So talking about different age groups, when you here are building for kids, which age groups do you target, and what's the difference between these age groups? What's your experience, Caitlin?
Yes, we build for kids of all ages. I think we have a special place in our heart for preschoolers, just because they're particularly tough to target. And then from a marketing perspective is even tougher because you're really talking to the parents a lot when you have children that young. But then as you get older, kids start to be, they're more funny, they're little adults. So there's a lot of different design considerations for each. On the preschool side, with parents being very present, they tend to prefer experiences that are more wholesome and that teach kids something, so educational in nature. But kids that age, they can't read, their cognition's not fully developed, and so you have to be, again, really simple and really straightforward. But that doesn't mean that detracts from the quality of what you're building. As you get older, as the kids get older, then you get to do more stuff and, challenge them differently, and your humor becomes more present in what you're doing. I think that's also another, there are some things that are ubiquitous for all kids app. Humor is one of them, no matter what the age group is. All kids like sparkles, all kids like fart jokes. I think that's one of the top things that Alexa's always doing. But yeah, we always try to think of what we can do to challenge the kids, no matter what the age group is. We always try to design the audio so that it's really rich. It has music, it has great sound effects, it has really interesting narrators that resonate with kids, and to design so that it's on their level. It's never speaking down to them.
So that takes a lot of creativity to have all these small nuggets and gadgets in your experience for the kids. I think that's really effort you should put in. So, and what is Sarah? What age groups are you targeting, and what's your opinion? What's the lowest level or the lowest age people or kids can use voice assistants?
Yeah, so when we want to label a voice experience for kids, we take that to mean like ages 5 to 12. We start our voice experiences at around age 5 because we find that right now, at this moment in time, the voice recognition for children younger than 5 isn't what you would hope it would be. Right now, I know that's improving by the day. So we really just start at age 5. There's a few things to consider based on that wide range of ages 5 through 12, right? So a 5-year-old, Dominik, as you mentioned earlier, brains are different. So a 5-year-old's brain is actually very different than a 10-year-old's brain. And they bring different life experiences and different understanding about the world to an experience. One thing we have found for ages 5 through 7 is that we have to provide more alternative responses so that the children are better understood. And my favorite example to provide for this goes back to our kids quiz skill on Amazon Alexa. And we had a question in level 1 of kids quiz, which is designed for ages 5 through 6. And the question was, what do you call someone who goes into outer space? And we kept getting errors where the voice speaker kept hearing, ask me not. And it was child after child would say, ask me not. And we finally realized they were actually saying astronaut, but the voice speaker was hearing ask me not. And we realized we had to make Ask Me Not an appropriate, acceptable answer to that question. And so we find that for some reason, it's between ages 5 and 7 that we have to provide those alternative responses. We're also very careful about age-appropriate content. Like we just talked about, a 5-year-old is very different than a 10-year-old. So we want to make sure that the content is very appropriate for a 5-year-old, and that we're not lumping all of the children together. Except for sort of like what Caitlin said about farts, except for animals. Everyone loves animals. So it's easy to make animal questions for all ages. But on the other topics, we try to make it very specific.
That's really interesting. So I think you mentioned one really important point: add more acceptable answers than you think. So speech development of the kids and the technology shortcomings at the moment produce a lot of unhandled at the moment. So we, with our skills, we constantly monitor for unhandled and try to optimize these points in the interactions. So we either change the prompts to be more on spot, or we modify the language models, and sometimes in really strange ways, like you said, to put strange names in there to support astronauts or ask me not responses. So it's really stuff we've been doing before, and it's really the early ages of voice recognition at the moment, and shortcomings with kids that really that can be frustrating, but can be could be overcome. So if you in the audience have similar experiences, are stuck with a problem that you can't solve for yourself, or you want to share best practices, now it's the time to share and ask the experts. Drop us a line in the chat box and we will try to answer your questions there. So sometimes you start from scratch as a studio and invent a voice experience all by yourself, but sometimes you get approached by a big brand that has an existing character and they want you to build the voice experience for their character. What are your best practices when you approach a journey like this with your clients, Adva?
So our portfolio has a mix of both. And when we work with brands, it's a great opportunity because they have their own assets. You know, they have characters that the kids love. It comes usually with very rich audio and sound, and you're not starting an experience from scratch. You're mostly adapting an experience that is happening elsewhere, like on a TV or music or a toy that they like, and you're taking that content and personality and giving it like a new life on smart speakers. So I think just like as a creator, it's such a fun way to think of things. And the way we usually start is, I think the most important thing is to just understand what their goal is and to make sure expectations are straight with like, what are they getting into, how kids are using smart speakers, what things may sound like a great idea, but they're just not right for the medium or for the technology. Like, you know, you could think of saying, I like this character and we want to be able to have like an hour-long conversation with her about anything in the world. And that sounds great, but I don't think anyone can build that. So we start with that and we build like a couple ideas using those characters and that content. And like what is usually leading me is to think of how would I want kids to interact with these characters if they could meet them. Like, for example, you go to a Disney park, you meet Snow White and Cinderella, and even if they don't really talk and, you know, they just ask like a couple questions of how are you, the kids are so excited about that. And smart speakers give you a touch of that, I think, to feel like someone you really admire is actually in your house talking to you and not even at you, like they're actually having some sort of conversation. And I think it's really wonderful. One thing to consider though is it's really different when you record voice actors or work with like existing voice scripts versus working with text to speech, which is what we've done up until recently, like in our studio. So it just really complicates things. You have to be very, very exact with your script because re-recording voice talent is complicated and expensive. So you have to just get everything right in the first draft and think of things that could potentially go wrong and record that in advance as well. And that's pretty challenging.
Yeah, so it's always a challenge working with big brands and especially with their beloved characters. So Caitlin, you mentioned working with Disney. What's your experiences working with big brands on their characters?
Yeah, I'd say 75% of the experience that we've published have been for brands and not for our own IP. We do have a few apps that are being released right now, actually, that we've developed with our own studio and our own character and IP, but a lot of the ones that are most used right now are with other big brands. So I think setting up the expectations for the brand is really important up front. When we first got into the voice space in 2017, in the earlier side, we were working with people to kind of help just test out the new medium. Every time a brand moves into a different platform, they have to think about how that changes the audience and the way that they talk to that audience, quite literally, on voice platforms, having a conversation with that audience directly. And so understanding what your goals are is really important. I've seen that change a lot in the conversations I've had with brands in the past 2.5 years that I've been working in the space. At first, it was all about brand engagement or just really testing the platform and trying to earn that early PR credit. We're doing something innovative. We're tied up with Amazon or Google. We're launching this new thing, and we're the first mover in that space. And I think that was true for some of the early sort of campaign supporting brands that we worked with. For example, the Talk to Dustin from Stranger Things experience on Google Assistant was built in order to support the campaign and launch day and date with their season 2 of the show. And I think that was a good example of how we've approached working on branded experiences since then. It's true for also the Wiggles, as well as the Disney Hits Challenge to a degree. We don't talk directly to the characters. We place the user in the middle of a story that involves them. So in the case of Talk to Dustin from Stranger Things, it assumes that you're on a walkie-talkie talking to all 4 of the boys who we fully recorded in an experience where they're trying to induct you to be a member of the AV club. So the first question says, like, can you hear me? Are you there? And it's Dustin talking to you on the other side of the walkie-talkie. So you feel like you're in the midst of it, but you're also part of the story, like going on. It's not just an open quiz format, which I think is more difficult for kids and anyone on this platform. Similarly with the Wiggles, which was launched in Australia first, but is available in all English platforms. That was an experience where you're hanging out with Emma Wiggle and you're going on a musical adventure to get ready to the concert and literally take Wiggles with you in the big red car. And in that case, she asks you for certain prompts like, what color guitar should we bring with us to the show? And kids are able to name any color, and then throughout the experience, everyone compliments you and Emma on that color guitar. So it feels like, again, you're on the adventure with these characters, not necessarily interviewing them. And so, yeah, for a lot of our experiences do feature a fully recorded voice. Ryan Seacrest for American Idol. We recorded Mina Masood for Disney Hits Challenge for a fully celebrity host takeover that we did for that. But one of the things that we've been doing that really works for us is, especially with quiz type content or in any experience so that you can evolve it, we'll I'll usually start with a fully recorded experience and then hand off to a text-to-speech voice who can fill in with some of the detail, which might evolve or might also just be a lot of extra responses that you might otherwise have to record. Examples like you input something and it responds back to you with whatever you said, and that could be pretty random. Or in the case with Disney Hits Challenge, which was designed to complement their playlist, as the playlist evolves, we might update it so that there are new questions and new songs and we don't have to bring someone back into the studio for that. So that's worked really well for us and for brands, I think, as well.
So I love the idea with the walkie-talkie that you involve the kids using the walkie-talkie talking to the character. I think that's kind of when I was a kid, my experience using the walkie-talkie talking to strangers that were on the road. And it's funny. So you both mentioned using a custom voice instead of TTS. And when we were building, for example, for Maxis Zeitreisen, we were using Alexa's voice as the computer where the kid can travel in time, and this is the assistant while traveling in time. So that's the computer he's using, she or he's using for when he's traveling in time. So this can be a solution to overcome the limitations of TTS versus a custom voice. Another thing when we are using a custom voice is always we really try to plan beforehand, put a lot of effort in having every text nailed to the point, but normally we can't make it 100%, and usually you have to go to the studio a second time to record some missing pieces afterwards. So you never make it 100% normally. So now when you have put so much time, creativity and energy and sweat into your skill, now it's out in the market. How do you do marketing for your skills or your actions? Have you any experience here, Caitlin?
Yes, I think that, I mentioned Talk to Dustin from Stranger Things. Having a larger campaign to tie into is really helpful because discoverability is one of the biggest challenges facing this industry right now. I think right up there with monetization. So with every experience that we do, and especially for kids, we build a trailer that can be shared on socials or on YouTube so that it shows people what they could do with the voice assistant experience and also how they use it. So for example, we did a trailer for the Wiggles where all of them said like, hey, and they pointed to a Google Assistant device and said like, here's our experience, this is how it works. And then actually took you through a sample flow of what would happen and showed you some of the graphics and the music that are built into that Canvas experience. And some of these are Talk to Dustin from Stranger Things trailer got over 10 million views. So that's a lot of eyeballs, which are then going to be investigating what is going, what the experience is itself. And I think I can't say this enough, but teaching people how it's a device where you have to be trained as a consumer in a way just to get into it. Once you get onto the platform, I think it's one of the most frictionless user interfaces that's out there. But before then, you have to teach them what the invocation is or what they can say. And it's nice to do that without the feel of branching through a menu. So yeah, socials, video content that shows what's happening in it, really important. Go to where your audience already lives and teach them about the experience there. Unless you're going to do a big paid advertising or PR push outside of that, then that's probably the best way to find them. We also have we get a lot of mentions by different mommy bloggers in the press. And so that always helps every time we see that we show up on another top 10 list for some of our experiences, especially for the kids ones, we see a spike in usage. I think consumers are not passively looking around for content on this space. And it's harder without like a mobile app store, like Apple's really successful app store. Discoverability is not something that people are passively spending time on as consumers. Maybe that's changed a little bit as both Adva and Sarah were pointing out with their usage spike going up and people being sort of confined to the home, but it's not something where people are just sitting there and scrolling and saying, what can I do next? And even if that does happen, getting boosted is harder. But we have found the platforms are great partners. If your experience is doing well, it is possible to get featured, and being on that What's New with Alexa email or on Google's top mentions or being routed to you when people ask just what kind of games they can play and having your action be recommended, that is really helpful.
So I remember when you're featured in one of the newsletters or you will be in the scroller on the homepage, then normally your usage 10-folds or 15-folds. And we have seen situations where our database was just crashing and couldn't handle all the users that were coming in or flooding in when the newsletter was released. So I think this is the shortcoming that's sometimes when you get mentioned in some of these big media outlets. So Sarah, what are your considerations to invocation marketing?
Yeah, so I love everything Caitlin said. I agree with a lot of that, and I love the idea of creating a trailer for your voice experiences. We have demo videos, but we haven't actually made them public. So Caitlin, I'm going to take your cue on that and start working on that. When you think about discoverability, I could actually do a whole hour just on the whole idea of discoverability. I have a friend that says discoverability is really more an awareness issue. Discoverability sounds very passive, and it sounds as though you've created something brilliant and now it is up to others to discover you. And we prefer to be more proactive with it and think about, if we want to make people aware of what we have, how are we going to do that? So we try anything and everything at Matchbox in our marketing plan. You just try everything and then see what gains traction. The very first place we start is we actually pay really close attention to what our beta testers say in the beta testing period before it's launched. And then we really pay attention to what the early users say. And if there's something that people are really latching onto, that they say they really love about it, and in multiple, you're getting that from multiple sources, then we really try to promote that aspect of the voice experience. Of course, we're listening to the negative comments too, but that's not what this is about. And then we just really try to use the positive language that a lot of people say about the voice experience in promoting our voice experiences. We've also found a lot of success in our social media pages. One of our social media pages has over 18,000 followers. And there's lots you can do with that. You can do cross promotions, you can do digital ads, you can do lots of different things with social media. And we have been very fortunate to receive recommendations from places like Common Sense and USA Today, as I mentioned earlier. So we really try to leverage that as well in all of our promotional materials and elsewhere. So it just takes lots of different strategies, and I think what might be working for one of our voice experiences might not work for another voice experience. So you just have to just keep trying every day, try different techniques and see what works.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your insights. I think we could go on talk for ages about our experiences with marketing, building recommendations, and where to place your skills to get the eyeballs or the speech to invoke them. So, but we are on a limited time budget. So one last final question for everybody. What is your outlook for voice-enabled kids entertainment for the next 2 to 3 years, Adva?
Well, I think this is just the beginning. I think what smart speakers are doing is they are training a new generation to know that they can talk to things and things will understand them and talk back. And I've seen this happen across multiple things that we don't think of them as talking, but kids expect them to answer. I think we're just going to see voice come in very different things right now for kids. Mobile apps are probably going to use it a lot more. I can say that, like, one of my observations from this lockdown was one of my kids has never used an iPad before, and she has now. And like it was an app that explains the instructions verbally because it's for kids that can't read yet. And her impulse was to talk back and say, but I don't know how to do that, or things like that. And the app didn't listen to anything, and she was really frustrated. And I think, especially with apps that talk, they should have that ability because the kids expect that. And I think it's not just going to be apps. I think I already saw that there's like a scooter for kids that has voice recognition, and some really interesting and strange gadgets that are going to come out with voice recognition. And I think we're going to see a period where it's everywhere, and then it might phase down to being in places that are more, that make more sense.
Yeah, I love the idea of like third-party toys where voice activation is integrated. I think this will push the boundaries to more use cases. So Caitlin, at Creativity, what are you thinking about next 2 or 3 years from now?
Well, we are one of the first development studios working on the third-party toy. So at the New York International Toy Fair in February, our partner KidCraft announced that they're building an Alexa connected kitchen, which got a lot of really positive press. I've been working in kids brand space for over 10, 12 years. In the past at Leapfrog, for example, when they were introducing tablets for kids, and the pressure of screens in the house, the presence of extra screens in the house, as well as having the internet connection, that was all over the news all the time, and parents and advocacy groups were all concerned. And I've been surprised about how little conversation there has been about that, because I think that parents today are using these devices in the home, and they're shared in some ways, and now that they're trusting them and able to put them into kids' bedrooms and let them have their own devices. And I think we're living in a moment now where consumers are all back home together, and they're with their families, and they're seeing what their kids are using, and they're wanting them to go spend some time using devices alone because they need a break. And so they're starting to really understand them and trust them. So we're going to see a big spike in adoption coming out of this, and of an acceptance of those devices. And following along that, with the likes of the Alexa Connected Kitchen, I think that the cost of the components that enable that technology to happen in the cloud have come down to a point where it's finally feasible for the toy market to start incorporating them. So, it's a very margin challenge space. Everything has to launch in Q4. That's a high ticket item. And the connected kitchen is just the first of many that we're seeing and ideating around, that our partners are seeing and excited about. So I think we will see a spike in usage and adoption of these type of devices in the home. And I think I love tracking kids as consumers, or users, if you will, because they're our future consumers. They're the ones who are going to grow up and impact technology in a big way. Just like Generation Z, the generation below millennials, below me, they're heralded as digital natives because they grew up without knowing a life without cell phones. Generation Alpha, which is the users of our voice apps right now, they're not going to really know a world without voice assistants. And so it's just a really interesting modality.
100% agree. It's a bright future for voice here. And thank you very much, Caitlin. At least in last minutes of our talk, you mentioned privacy. So we have ticked this box as well for everything related to voice that should be included in every session that we are hearing here today. So what is Matchbox perspective on voice technology for the next years?
Yeah, pretty much in line with what Adva and Caitlin have said. We're just really excited about more and more families realizing how easy and accessible a centralized voice assistant can be in their home and also in their cars. So everywhere you go, voice is going to be everywhere. And I think it's just going to become expected, and it's going to become just even more easy to use. Voice is going to be everywhere, and people will come to expect voice interactions in the future.
Yeah, exciting times ahead. So I share every of your optimism. I think like the voice footprint will grow more and more from every year, and we will see just the beginning of the voice revolution at the moment. So thank you very much to all panelists for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your insights and your knowledge. Thanks for MODEF and team organizing this event. Thank you out there in front of your screens. And if you want to know more about us, follow us on the socials, stay connected, and try our voice applications. We will be sticking around here at the chat for further questions and try to answer them. And now, wherever you are at the moment, have a good morning, good day, and good night. Thanks for tuning in.